I'm so pleased to have been invited to introduce this screening of Jeanne Dielman, 23 Rue du Commerce, 1080 Brussels, at the Reina Sofia. It's gratifying, both from a feminist and a cinephile perspective, that this film, which brought feminism and cinema together like no other, should be finding a new audience. We probably have to thank the Sight and Sound Critics poll for this. Sight and Sound, the leading British film journal, conducts a poll every 10 years asking film critics and academics to name the 10 greatest films of all time. There is, of course, something ridiculous about this exercise, but it felt like a historic moment when, in the 2022 poll, was topped by Jeanne Dielman, for the first time, a film directed by a woman. And the ultimate surprise goes even further. Jeanne Dielman is an experimental film. Its cinematic style and its filmic strategies are closer to avant-garde than either mainstream or art house traditions. And you all know you'll be watching a very demanding film for the next 3 hours. Jeanne Dielman dates from a moment in the mid-1970s when an important strand of women, critics, cinephiles, academics, historians, filmmakers, etc., argued that women's cinema would have to break the rules. It would have to experiment with and reinvent film language, first as a gesture against male-dominated cinema, but also to discover ways in which women could explore topics and perspectives hitherto neglected or unimaginable in the patriarchal world. Jeanne Dielman brings this aspiration onto the screen. It's a film that agonizingly depicts women's oppression, but Chantal Akerman transforms cinema, itself so often used as an instrument of women's oppression, into a liberating force. I first saw Jeanne Dielman at the Edinburgh Film Festival in 1975. It was a year of many remarkable films, radical, experimental, political, made by women and men. But Jeanne Dielman stood out as something completely new, completely unexpected. It was the film's courage that was immediately most striking at the time. Akerman's unwavering, luminous political perspective, her uncompromising but coherent use of film language was immediately recognizable as a landmark for both feminism and film. One might say that it felt as though there was a before and after Jeanne Dielman, just as once there'd been a before and after Citizen Kane. I want to make a few points to introduce the experience of watching Jeanne Dielman. On one level, it's a film about temporality, the experience of cinematic time and narrative time. The story unfolds over 3 days, arranged across a grid-like pattern. Repetition, and then the failure to repeat, are of the essence and give the film its particular rhythm, a kind of musical beat with disastrous variations. Akerman gives a housewife's domestic actions and gestures new value on the screen. She shows the real time they take to become screen time, thus throwing the spectator's understanding of cinematic convention into disarray. Usually, of course, convention demands a shift in point of view, a camera movement, and so on, to save the spectator from the strangeness of seeing time itself passing. But here, the shots are held beyond normal expectation. The flow of time belonging to the fiction begins to fade away, replaced by the time of its recording, which then becomes visible. And one is made aware of the cinema's process. Only film can record and preserve the image of time in duration, a chunk of time, fossilized as it passes. I'd like to draw attention to a couple of other things in the film, without going into detail, without giving anything away. First of all, there's Akerman's use of two kinds of light or lighting. Every time Jeanne leaves a room, she switches off the lights, then has to turn them on again when she returns. On the level of character, this is simply the instinct of the economically minded housewife. But simultaneously, on a formal and filmic level, note how these variations in lightness and darkness bring a consciousness of cinematic texture to the screen. And then there's the blue light flashing, the neon light that penetrates the domestic's interior of Jeanne's sitting room, like a symptom from a film noir. Note how this very subtle visual device inflects the film's atmosphere and creates a special affect. Thematically, psychoanalysis is a point of reference running through the film. Delphine Seyrigg's amazing performance captures and even makes manifest her character's unconscious and the repression embodied by her all too perfect outwards appearance. Chantal Akerman was close in the early 1970s to the French feminist group Psychanalyse et Politique, Psych et Pol, and although she moved away from the group, the importance of psychoanalysis for feminist politics still informs Jeanne Dielman, both as a particular portrait of this particular woman and also as a reminder of film's ability to convey spaces and temporalities of the unconscious mind. Furthermore, there's a kind of craziness about Jeanne Dielman, an excess, some moments when one's tempted to laugh. And to my mind, there's an achievement of this kind, even, dare I say it, a masterpiece of this kind, demands a certain kind of obsessive craziness on the part of its director. But I won't go on. You'll be waiting for me to stop so you can watch the film. But I want to make one last final summing up point. Akerman has made use of the language of film to inscribe the muteness of women's lives and experiences onto the screen, dramatized in the emblematic silence of Jeanne's existence and the gradual eruption of her unconscious into symptomatic actions, slips, and parapraxes, and brought all of this into the public sphere of the cinema. Once again, thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the film.